Yesterday I found out that my best friend from growing up is in jail for the next 15 years or so for beating a 67-year-old woman to death here in California, in Carlsbad. One of my best friends, Brian Leffler, is in jail, and he beat a lady to death a couple of years ago while he was robbing her. Don't worry, no guns were involved. She certainly wasn't armed. He just broke in and in the course of robbing her, punched her a lot in the face apparently, and she died from those injuries. When I found this news because I was just looking up different people that I knew from the past, and I was always trying to find Brian and never could until now I found him. And I just thought, wow, I gotta mention something about this because I know his upbringing, and it's very reasonable that this happened, that he went and did this based on his past. I'm not going to mention too much about that. Don't mind the dogs. More on that later. But when I was sitting down to find more about Brian so that I could make a video and say, wow, this guy beat this woman to death, and I know why he did, or I could understand why he did based on his past, I came across other recent murder stories and attempted murder stories. And then so I sat down to weave a whole thing together and include Brian's story, and then even today I came across another new murder story. The Taft High School. There was a shooting at Taft High School in California, and 2 people were shot. And so this is sparking gun control, whatnot. There was a person that reported on it. This is from Huffington Post, and they feature a guy named David Bates, and on his Twitter he puts some quote, and then he puts gun control as a hashtag, and then Taft. So gun control, the Taft thing points towards gun control. And then there's people in the comment section, lemmings, talking about the NRA doesn't want to help you. They just want more profits. Actually, on Bates' Twitter, this girl named Mary Holm, she puts, the NRA isn't fighting for your rights or for the Constitution, it's fighting for more gun control profits. Okay. Another thing that that I came across when I was looking for more on my friend Brian Leffler and the woman that he killed, I came across from April 2012 a guy named Brendan O'Rourke who got a life sentence for shooting near San Diego. He was in, where was it? Kelly Elementary in Carlsbad, which is where Brian beat that woman and she later died. In Carlsbad, a guy named Brendan O'Rourke went on to Kelly Elementary School with a .357 Magnum revolver and started shooting. And he wanted to, according to him, kill a lot of white Christian kids. Nothing much to say about that, long story, but he seriously wounded 2 girls. They pointed out it was girls because then it matters more. But he seriously wounded 2 people. But he was stopped by 3 construction workers. Now when I look at the Taft High School thing, which obviously was stopped, and then Brendan O'Rourke was obviously stopped, down in the comments you will find, actually for a later story I'm going to mention Melinda Harmon, who shot up the person who broke into her house and protected her kids. In the comment section you will hear some self-righteous people saying, oh, so this one lady protected herself, how many people are getting killed, and this kind of stuff. And so the idea is, well, if we disarm the population, then we'll be safer. Meanwhile, for every Brendan O'Rourke, there are 3 guys, or people, 3 construction workers ready to take them down, risk their life. 3 construction workers stopped Brendan O'Rourke in Carlsbad. They risked their life running up on a guy who's shooting, and the idea is we should disarm people. How about we should arm those 3, are they not heroes now? Let's arm our heroes. Let's just leave it at that. Let's just arm our heroes. So for every shooter you hear about, you hear about several heroes. The Brendan O'Rourke, one shooter, 3 heroes, and a whole lot of kids saved because they jumped to it. Well, they obviously didn't need guns to do it. So you want to disarm your heroes so that they have to risk their lives. None of them got killed. What if they had gotten killed? So you want them to risk their lives and be disarmed. This reminds me of I got some notes here, so that's why I'm doing it this way. It's a tough story to weave together. The Connecticut shooting, Sandy Hook, there's a whole lot of congratulations of various heroes the teachers who barricaded kids into rooms, and one of them said, the story is how she kept the kids safe by praying and telling them that she loved them after barricading herself in a room. There's a popular cartoon going around where a person lying in a hospital bed says, "Doctor, my family's prayers are keeping me alive." And the doctor says, "Okay, well I guess you won't need this," and unplugs the life support, and the person commences to die. Well, that's very funny and everything, but imagine, yeah, you're saved, because that's the storyline. The storyline is this lady saved these kids or kept them safe through barricading, prayer, and telling them I love you. Let's take out each one of those scientifically and figure out which one actually saved those kids. It was the barricading. Meanwhile, there were other teachers who were said to have saved their kids and died in the process. Imagine that. Visualize that. There is a teacher cowering in a corner and lying about where the kids are so that they don't get hurt. Then she dies. She's a hero. That's one of the things going on. I couldn't find the particular lady, but she's a hero for cowering in the corner. It is pretty respectable to, in your last moments, think to protect other people, but imagine her having a gun. Well, you don't need a gun. Melinda Harmon had a gun. Melinda Herman. She was in Georgia. She cowered down just the same as those teachers in Connecticut. A guy came to her door, rang a couple of times. She didn't answer. He goes to his SUV, comes back, and rings a bunch more. She takes her kids, goes upstairs, locks a bathroom door, locks a bedroom door, and is in a crawl space. Long story short, this guy, can't find his name, but the guy followed or went upstairs, and the lady had her gun out of her safe. The lady that lived in the house, and then she got on the phone with the cops, and she got on the phone with her husband. So she's on the phone with I think her husband, and her husband's on the phone with the cops. And the guy comes up, and once he starts to enter the crawl space where they are, she starts shooting. And the big news now is that her husband was saying, shoot him again. And the guy who broke in was saying, please stop, or something like this. Now, he had stuff there for the purpose of burglary tools and whatnot. And there's this uproar about she should have called the cops first. Why didn't she run out the back of the house? Why didn't she fire a warning shot? All this stuff. Why would that guy, this crazy guy, tell her to keep shooting when obviously she might have already gotten him? Again, visualize it, just like the Connecticut shooting. Visualize this lady hiding away with a gun and her 2 babies. I don't know how old they were, but her 2 kids. And people are thinking, she should have done this, she should have done that, she should have fired a warning shot. The idea plenty of them are putting forward is he was just going to burglarize. Last I heard, burglarizing isn't an offense we punish with death. So she's supposed to assume, here with her kids, that he's not armed. She's supposed to assume that when she shot him and he said, please stop, that he was incapacitated enough so where he wouldn't have just killed her right away, or wouldn't have been desperate and shot back. Can you imagine the mindset that's been socialized into people who would believe that she should have done something differently? People are saying, why didn't she run? Well, she had 2 kids with her. And the idea is that he was just going to burglarize her. Some people were saying, well, what if he was going to rape her? Well, there's no reason to assume that. He was just going to burglarize her. So she's supposed to be crouched down and just assume, well, he's just going to burglarize. He probably won't rape me, probably won't hurt my kids. She's supposed to be thinking all this. This brings me back to Brian Leffler. That lady that he killed, her name is... these dogs. Wait for it. Barbara Novelich. She was a 67-year-old. When he broke in, Barbara made herself known. He knew she was there. Didn't stop him. He didn't even have a gun. She didn't have a gun. End of the story, he beat her to death. And now he's in jail. So imagine, she shouldn't be armed? Well, no, we disarm everyone, and that way no one has guns. Well, it's been said, criminals don't obey laws. Well, no, but that'll be the interregnum. A lot of people will be getting killed in the part where law-abiding citizens have given up their guns for defense, but not the criminals. So in the interregnum, a lot of people will get killed, but then we'll be able to narrow down, anybody who has guns now, it's a crime, so we'll be able to get those criminals as they commit crimes. Meanwhile, a lot of Barbara Noveliches are going to die. Meanwhile, the three guys who stopped Brendan O'Rourke, they just have to do that while risking their lives and not being armed. The Connecticut shooting teachers just have to cower down and hope someone comes to save them instead of saving themselves. Now, here's another thing I want to say about this. The Taft High School, where the shooting was, and we're talking all about gun control now, and okay, let's do this. Taft High School is in California. The school where Brendan O'Rourke went is also in California, Kelly Elementary. These are in California. Now, Connecticut's very far from California, but let's focus on California. These people who want gun control, you got a really easy option. Go to Mexico. I'm here in Mexico. There's absolute gun ban. You can't have guns here. Complete ban on guns for civilians. The cops can't walk around here with machine guns. Well, at least there's a gun ban. You want to be one of the 49 people? Total barbarity as Mexican cartel dumps 49 torsos along a highway. That was the Washington Post reporting May 13th, 2012. Mexico has a ban on guns, and wouldn't you know it, the criminals don't obey that ban. And Mexico has one of the highest murder rates with guns in the world. But since the goal is gun banning, rush down here, you Californians who are worried about people having guns and you think that it will help, and then the people speaking on your behalf, the hippie liberals with their, as it's been pointed out, with their bodyguards that have guns, disarm the population up there, but in the meantime, before everyone's disarmed, rush down to Mexico for safety, because we have a gun ban down here. Let me mention those annoying dogs. I'm trying to do a video about people getting killed up here. Dogs, stop barking. Why are the dogs there? It's the first line of defense against getting burglarized. Everyone around here has dogs. Let's not even talk about people generally. The guy here that my friend is renting from, why does he have dogs? One of the reasons is that a few months ago, his uncle was beaten to death and shot. And an 18-year-old that was with his uncle was also beaten to death and shot. Just right here, a couple blocks away. As I mentioned in another video, a lady, I don't know that it was a lady, but we think it's a lady, right around the corner, she was killed. 2 days later, they were already celebrating something else because this stuff just happens. You don't have time to say, well, someone was killed over here and 2 people go, let's ban guns. Guns are already banned. One of the highest murder rates in the world here in Mexico. The reason why a gun ban doesn't work when the guns are there to protect you from not just the crazy criminals but your own government is because what if you're here in Mexico, disarmed, and the United States government gave thousands of guns through the ATF gun walk, Operation Fast and Furious, thousands of guns to people knowing they were going to go into the hands of these Mexican cartels. Thousands of people died from that. Can you imagine being disarmed and thinking, oh, only a gun nut, as some of the comments in the Melinda Herman story, oh, only rednecks and gun nuts want guns. Can you imagine just being a Mexican down here, having the United States government in all its, let's figure out where these guns will go by giving guns. Hey, what do you know? Maybe it's just that they're gun running and they're arming criminals. Or let's just assume they had the best intentions. Okay, let's assume they had the best intentions. When the United States government, the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, gave thousands of guns and caused the death of thousands of Mexicans down here, and a Border Patrol agent. More on that in a second. Imagine anyone who would go in the direction of talking about Melinda Herman or her husband. That guy was begging her to stop. You know who was begging people to stop? The Mexicans who were getting killed by the guns that the United States government gave. I'm sure all of them probably begged for that to stop when they were getting killed after they were disarmed. So how do you fix this? Well, one of the people who died from Operation Fast and Furious, where our government gave guns effectively gave them to Mexican gangs. One of the people who died was a Border Patrol agent, United States Border Patrol. I have one of my best friends growing up, not Brian. One of my best friends is I think he's retired from Border Patrol now, but last I talked to him, he was in the Border Patrol here on the southern border. And he's former Marines. He was in the Marines and he went to Border Patrol. Now, imagine what would have happened if he caught wind of Operation Fast and Furious, of the ATF gun walk. Imagine if he had found out that the ATF is allowing guns to get into the hands of the Mexican gangs and the Mexican mafias, and people are getting killed by the hundreds, by thousands. Imagine if he had blown the whistle on that. My friend, real person, real Border Patrol agent, not the one who died. Imagine if the one who died and my friend blew the whistle, but it didn't get blown loud enough. Where would they be? Consider Bradley Manning. He blew the whistle on criminal activity, and now he's being tortured by United States government in the United States jail. So imagine that. Imagine the gun nuts and the rednecks who think the government also needs to be kept in check. What kind of you don't want to just blindly be obedient to the government? That's the new thing. See, it was crazy and mindless when those rednecks and Republicans talked like that for Bush. Let's trust Bush. But now that it's a different guy who escalated Bush's wars, wants to disarm you, and wants to talk all about how we need no guns, now it's okay to just trust the government and think it's just the Adam Lanzas. Meanwhile, ask any of these Mexican families whose family members were killed as a result of Fast and Furious, where the United States government gave the guns. Ask if you can just trust the government. Oh, they meant well. They would have put my Border Patrol friend in jail and tortured him if he had blown the lid on that, just like Bradley Manning's getting tortured. And then you consider my friend Brian Leffler, who killed this woman. She was just cowered down, not able to defend herself. Now, Mexicans have all these annoying dogs because you need something to warn you that somebody might be coming to burglarize you, hurt your family, etc. And how quickly the mindset of all these obedient, useful idiots say things like only gun nuts and rednecks would want guns. Why didn't Melinda Herman? Why did Melinda Herman run with her 2 kids? Why did she shoot this guy? Why did she shoot him so much? All of this mindset going away from the obvious, which is, if you have one Brendan O'Rourke trying to shoot up your kids, and you have 3 good people, 3 construction workers stop him, that's a pretty good ratio, 3 to 1. And of course the ratio probably is a lot better than just 3 to 1. So do you want to arm and provide the good people and the heroes, these teachers that we're heroifying just to feel good, these Connecticut teachers? They shouldn't have had to just cower away, pray and say I love you, and hope that they didn't get killed. They should have been in a position to actually defend themselves. Because you can't just wait for someone else to defend you sometimes. Sometimes your in a crawl space and someone's coming through door after door, and yet you're supposed to just handle it exactly right. Like I said, and last I'll say, if you believe in gun control as a fix for the Taft shooting, the Kelly Elementary School shooting, if gun control fixed that, just come right across the border in Mexico. They got a gun ban here, highest murder rate in the world here, one of the highest. Nevertheless, since you don't want to make sense, come on down to Mexico. The government will keep you safe. To say nothing, well actually I'll mention one more thing, to say nothing of the fact that there's known complicity between the government, the police, and the drug lords here. So, I mean, American journalists have been killed for pointing that out. The 49 people who were dismembered and their torsos, their arms, legs, and heads were cut off. The torsos that were tossed, 49 torsos in May 13th, 2012. 43 women, or 43 men, 6 women. They might have just been rival gangs. They might have been whoever. Doesn't matter. But journalists get their heads cut off for pointing out the complicity. So think of that the next time you blindly trust the government not to be willing to do these things. They gave guns, thousands of guns, effectively to the Mexican cartels to see what would happen, to trace them back to this drug lord. Why? When they find those drug lords, they load them up with 200 rounds. They can't get worse. Why did they give thousands of guns? Why did the ATF, this is a big government agency, why did they give thousands of guns to the only people that have guns here, the criminals? No law-abiding citizen in Mexico has a gun. So again, simple proposition. If you believe in gun control, to take guns out of the hands of bad people, come down to Mexico, because there's a gun ban down here. In the meantime, imagine this. If no one should have guns, just tell your government this: we will absolutely, just for the sake of argument, we will completely disarm after the criminals. Do a government survey study, establish when the criminals have been disarmed, you know, give them the little survey, are you disarmed, however you want to do it. First, let's prioritize, you know, because I mean, logistically, like when you want to get rid of illegal immigrants, okay, that's 12 million people. Logistically, how do you do it? If you even wanted to do it. So let's set out a plan to ban guns. Well, let's prioritize for criminals. It's reasonable. It's a concession. All the law-abiding gun people, I speak for them now, they're willing to completely disarm after you disarm all the criminals. So set up that system where you can target the criminals and disarm them, and then ask for the law-abiding citizens to give up their guns too. Because in the meantime, the obvious thing is you can't target the criminals. They don't obey laws, and they won't give up their guns. Only a law-abiding citizen would. Correction, only a stupid law-abiding citizen would. Meanwhile, imagine in the United States, how impossible would it be to have a completely disarmed population and then have the United States government giving guns to criminal elements. They did it here in Mexico, Operation Fast and Furious. Why wouldn't they give the guns to criminal elements in the United States? Well, no, they were trying to do something. They wouldn't need to try to do anything because we'd all be No, it doesn't make any sense at all. They gave guns to a criminal element in Mexico amongst a disarmed populace. Thousands were killed. And a United States Border Patrol agent, and if my Border Patrol agent friend had blown the whistle on that, he'd have been like Bradley Manning, in a jail for telling the truth against government tyranny. Bradley Manning is getting tortured right now for telling the truth. So think of that, go back to sleep, and recognize anyone who you hear thinking gun control is the answer, just come down to Mexico.